breaking down the Caps netminder shot at some hardware this summer. Rob Parker joining us on the phone. Hi, Rob.
Hi, John. How are you?
Great. Good to have you here on a Friday. The name of the article, again, is about Braden Holtby. And is Braden Holtby worthy of the Vezina? Let's just start with a simple yes or no, and then we'll break it down from there. Do you believe, Rob Parker, he is worthy of the Vezina? I would think yes. I would think you would as well.
Yeah, he's worthy of it. I wouldn't say it's a lock or anything, but certainly wouldn't be a surprise or undeserving if he got it. So it's just going to be a matter of how the voters actually see it.
Holtby, incredible early when the Caps really needed him. They stacked up a lot of wins in the first half of the year and at midseason, opening up a very big, comfortable standings lead. There has been a lot made about the quote-unquote slump that he was in that seemingly is coming out. Certainly played well here on Tuesday. Thought he played pretty well in California, too. Does it make sense to punish him because his slump months have come more recently? Is this a recency bias that we're dealing with here when we're overlooking some of the things that he did early on, which really got this team in this position to begin with?
I don't think it makes sense. I think it definitely is recency bias. Unfortunately, that seems to be how things go. I know you just mentioned that Ottawa would need to put on a strong push to make the playoffs just like they did last year. And Andrew Hammond had, finished the year on that amazing run. In Minnesota, Devin Dubnyk finished the year on an amazing run, and everyone talked about all that. But what happened in the first half of the year, not necessarily those guys' fault, but all those games matter just the same in the first half. And actually, I think just recently, Barry Trotz finally acknowledged the kind of human emotion side of some of the quote-unquote struggles the teams had, where they've got this huge lead. There's not a whole lot of intensity or desperation for the points, and a lot of that is because they got that lead. They didn't play their best hockey from around Thanksgiving to New Year's, but they won a lot of games because Holtby was great. And now you have the team kind of taking their foot off the gas, and perversely you're going to say, oh, well, he slumped when they didn't really need the points like they did earlier in the year, and that's because he got them the points, and that's going to be the notch against him on why he should not be the Vezina winner. I think it's kind of perverse. It's not entirely logical in terms of all the games matter, all the points are the same, and they're way ahead of the league, and it's not like he's a bystander who just happens to be a benefactor of a great team. He's a huge part of them being a great team.
Rob, there's a number of charts on here comparing Braden Holtby this season to Carey Price last season, and just statistically speaking for the listener, where exactly does Braden's season match up with Carey's? There was a lot of talk about Price being an MVP. You heard a little bit of that maybe at midseason, but Braden might be a little bit of a victim of the team in front of him, and we mean that in the best possible way, that the Caps are a really good team, and Montreal was Carey Price and an average at best hockey team in front of him last year, and I think we found out that that was really the case this year when they didn't have him, and look where Montreal is right now. But kind of compare and contrast for us the season that Braden's having right now and what Carey Price did a year ago.
Yeah, you're right. The Caps don't need him to be quite that good, and seeing what Montreal looks like without him is probably the starkest point you could make. But I think even on the individual performance, he's not quite at that level. Carey Price was about 10 points better on the save percentages, and just really like head and shoulders above the rest of the league, and really played out of this world. So Holtby's right there on the individual performance metrics with everyone else. No one's too far ahead of him, but he's not, clearly standing out the way Price did, which is not a knock on Holtby at all. Those kind of seasons are rare. You don't see them very often. That's why Carey Price won the MVP. So, not taking anything away from Braden Holtby, but that's just not the kind of season we're looking at.
Name of the article on Japers Rink. Tommy Chalk, the author here. Is Braden Holtby worthy of the Vezina? Breaking down the Caps netminder shot at some hardware this summer. And Rob Parker joining us here from Japers Rink. We were reminded today, Rob, with John Carlson seemingly getting closer and saying a lot of positive things after skating after the team today. Didn't seem to be skating with any kind of strain at all. Barry Trotz saying that don't get too excited yet. There still is no timetable. Maybe he goes on this 3-game trip. Maybe he doesn't, and maybe he stays home and works with Mark Nemish a little while longer here. But it does remind us that Braden Holtby has had to overcome the loss of both top-pair defenders. Orpik out for 3 months. Carlson has missed a big chunk of the second half. The best defensive forward on the team has been out for extended periods of time, too, Jay Beagle, which in theory should make his job tougher. Yes or no?
Yeah, if you believe that those guys are actually good players, which I do, then yeah, it's got to make make them tougher. If Ovechkin misses a bunch of time and the Caps don't score goals, people are going to say, well, yeah, they didn't score goals because they were missing an offensive threat. I see no reason why it's really different defensively. It's harder sometimes to measure defensive impact on a game, so they're not necessarily going to be these clear numbers like goals that you can point at and say, oh, yeah, well, obviously that was because they missed their top pair defenseman and their guy who was going to take a lot of the defensive zone faceoffs at crucial moments. But just from a logical standpoint, these are the guys that Barry Trotz trusts the most. They take the high-pressure minutes. They take the top-line minutes. And not only when they're not on the ice, but now you have your second pair playing the top pair. You've got your third pair guys playing in second pair guys, or in a lot of cases, Nate Schmidt was on the top pair for a long time. And I just don't see how that could not have an impact, even if it might not always be perfectly measurable. Anytime you're missing crucial players, it's going to have an impact on the team. So, I have no idea whether GMs are going to take that into account. You'd like to think that they would, seeing as how basically every GM in the league has missed a guy at some point, and they probably realized, wow, that really did not help us out when our best players were out of the game, and they're the ones doing the voting. But it's, I think, maybe a little more nuanced than the Vezina discussions generally get, but I would hope that people would at least recognize that and kind of look at the totality of the circumstances with the season he's having. And, I think people look at how far ahead they are and think, oh, well, this is just a cakewalk. They're just, steamrolling teams, but that hasn't really been the case. They've won a lot of really close games, but because they won them, that's why their standings look great. But this isn't a team that's just mowing people down every single night, and Holtby has to have a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, it's funny because, a lot of times you go around the league, it's like, oh, you guys are having a great season, whatever. You see little snippets of other teams' games. I think that is the assumption that the Caps are just steamrolling everybody, and it's been a little more of a struggle. In fact, to that point, they played a ton of one-goal games. They have a great record in those games. Strong indication that Braden's keeping them in games and finding a way to get things done when games are on the line. And certainly that's been the case more often than not, even as recently as the California trip, the game in Anaheim, where that goal happens early in the first minute with Getzlaf and then nothing the rest of the way. Find a way to tie it, find a way to win it. There were a lot of times, even in recent times here, you could probably look at the Carolina game similarly on Tuesday, where in those one-goal games, Caps have been finding a way.
Yeah, definitely. And some people look at one-goal wins as a little bit of a coin flip or a fluke, but the fact remains, if you're in those games, those become pressure situations. And I know we've talked a lot about the starts and why they haven't had the intensity, but once you get into those one-goal third periods, the natural competitive nature of these guys takes over, and no one wants to give up anything. And I'm hard-pressed to think of bad third-period goals or situations where Holtby really was the guy who let them down. The only one that comes to mind is that 1-0 loss to Detroit, and that was a 1-0 game. He got no help, let in a bit of a soft goal late in the game, but whatever, that happens, and we're going back to like December for that. So he's there once it gets to crunch time. Starts are an issue that everyone's a part of, but obviously one-goal losses mean you had a chance to win, and he's at least keeping them in it. They don't have very many multiple goal losses, which means even when they're losing, they're not getting skated out of the building by anyone, really. It's just they've got a few one-offs where they had a bad night or whatever. But every game, it's theirs for the taking. He's there in the third period when that's when the bounces and the close calls matter. And I like my chances with Holtby as well as anyone else in the league right now if we're talking about a one-goal third period.
Rob, final question for you as the pursuit of Martin Brodeur continues here tonight, and Braden up against maybe the hottest goalie in the league in Pekka Rinne tonight. He'll be looking for win number 43. The record is 48. You're going to be running out of racetrack here at some point, and Barry Trotz has said maybe even as many as 4 games that Grubauer gets. Certainly will get 3 with the back-to-backs that this team has. Do you believe that he will have a solid chance to get to 48 and potentially pass Brodeur?
Yeah, I think that he's going to have a good chance. The team, even with this slump lately where they kind of slowed down their winning pace, they've still been winning a lot more games than they've been losing. So they don't need really too much luck to get another 7 wins for him in 9 or 10 starts. So if he gets it, I think he's a lock. I mean, the GMs vote, and they don't always vote for the guy who has the most wins, but the guy who has the most wins is always a finalist, and he really needs to be outperformed kind of substantially on some of the individual metrics, either save percentage or goals against average or maybe shutouts. So when the GMs see these record-breaking years where the guy, if he sets a record and wins, I don't see them looking away from that. They're still old-school types. They're still results-oriented, and, all-time most wins is a result that it's hard to look away from. So he's not going to have a lot of margin for error. The team's going to have to play well in front of him, but I'm certainly not going to rule him out. I think you just alluded to Ovechkin chasing 50. I think that Holtby has at least as good a chance to catch 49 as Ovi does for 50. So we'll see. It'll be interesting, and, we're waiting for the playoffs, but at least it gives us something to watch for with a little bit more investment than just waiting for April.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see who comes up with more wins or goals between Holtby and Alex before it's all done. Our weekly conversation with Rob Parker here from Japers Rink. Rob, thanks.
Thanks a lot, John.
All right, Rob Parker from Japers Rink. Again, the name of the article is Braden Holtby, worthy of the Vezina, up now at japersrink.com, breaking down the Caps netminder shot at some hardware this summer.